Many of you have asked how I get my color. So today I'm going to give you a little look inside of my planner, and I am going to show you how to add color to your date side of the page. I'm going to begin by taking some plain gesso. Cheap stuff, Liquitex. I don't even worry about the good stuff. So I'm taking my gesso. Many of you have asked whether or not I use gesso. And I also use golden fluid acrylics. I love them. They give wonderful, rich, saturated color. This is the cobalt teal. I am adding, you notice, just a tiny drop of this color into the gesso to just give me a whisper of color. You see? There's very, very little color. But you can see it's not exactly white. So I'm going to add just a little more. Remember, you can always add. Subtracting the color is very difficult. I'm going to get my brush, plain old, crappy old brush, and I'm going to dip it into just a little bit of water, and I'm going to dip that into my gesso. Now notice, I'm tapping it along the sides. I want to try to get some of that color up. And I'm not putting a lot of color on here. This brush is still fairly wet. And now I am just taking it and wiping it all over this page. So I'm coating my page with just a tiny bit of gesso. In order to make this coordinate just a little bit, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put some of my color over here. Why is she doing that? Well, because I like to use my color copies as a base. If you noticed what I did, I also took my water and dipped it into my gesso. And I'm just brushing this. It's giving me a softer effect. Notice? It'll dry softer, you'll see. All right, we're going to flip this over. And on this side, I'm going to add a little bit of gesso too. And I'm going to take my damp paper towel and scrub it into this. So now we're just kind of coordinating the effort. A little more gesso to this side of the page. This side of the page I left well enough alone. I have not done anything to all of this. Excuse my little mop rag there. But you can see I've washi taped this in. Okay, on this side, just left well enough alone, just put a little tiny bit of the watered down gesso on it. This is pretty dry, so now I can begin to add some color. I am going to use some Derwent pencils. These are one of my favorite things in the whole world to use. And some of you may be familiar with one of the techniques that I used in the past. If you took the 21 Secrets class, I used a baby wipe, a plain old garden variety baby wipe. Doesn't have to be an expensive one. I use the baby wipe as a tool. So I'm going to take a teal Inktense pencil. This is called Field Green. And I'm going to add a little bit of the green to this page. If you notice, I've got some green here and some green here. That's why I'm adding the green. We want to make this coordinate. But I don't want this too dark. I don't want this as dark as this side because I'm going to write on this side of the page. So I'm going to take this and just scribble it. Now, if you don't have Derwent Inktense, not to worry. I've got a ton of other watercolor pencils that I use all of the time. I'm taking a blue. This is Iris Blue. It's kind of Smurf blue like my nails. And I'm going to add the blue. And I'm scribbling it. There is no rhyme or reason to this. I just want to get color down on the page. That's all I want to do. Add the color as quickly as I can. Alright, so I've got two colors down, and I'm thinking But if I can find a fuchsia or a lilac, that would be lovely. We'll just add just a little touch here and there. Doesn't have to be a whole bunch. Okay. And now I'm going to take my baby wipe, and I am going to smoosh these colors together. Notice I'm starting from the outside edge. I'm taking my baby wipe. I am turning my baby wipe. And I want to get color down the edge of this. I want all of this colored. Now, if it looks splotchy and horrid, we're not going to worry about that. There's more to come. So that's the first step. What we're going to do now is dry all of this. So I'm going to take my trusty dryer, and I'll be right back. I have dried my page. I've gotten a few more pencils. This time I'm using apple green. Apple green Derwent is one of my favorites. I've got the field green again and the iris blue, and I am going to add more color. Now, this is the trick. The trick is you're adding layer of color lightly over layer of color, letting it dry in between each application of color. That is the key. The key is to keep adding the color kind of in small doses. And if I want color over here, I'm going to add that now, because this is a good time to do it. And I'll check this side, and I'm pretty okay with that side. But, okay, maybe I'll throw some apple green over here too. So even on my color copies, I am adding color. I'm adding some more blue, the iris blue. Okay. And I'm pretty happy with what this looks like over here. Although maybe, okay, we'll throw it a little more blue over here. All right. Blue. And bear with me, as I said, I work intuitively. And more of this green, field green. Okay. I'm going to take the baby wipe again. And smoosh the color. And now we're starting to get that lovely effect it's starting to blend with this. You can see that. If I've gotten too much color down and I'm not happy with it, I'll just lift a little with the baby wipe. When I use my baby wipe, I'm going to rub this in. When I use my baby wipe, I am not applying a lot of pressure. Why? Because then I'm destroying my color copies to begin with, and I'm not getting that real soft effect that I like. So I'm going to dry this one more time, and I'll be back. I'm back, and this time I've got plain old acrylic paint. Plain old acrylic paint, kind you can get in any craft store. And this happens to be called Paradise Blue. And it's snowing outside, so that thought is very lovely, as is my color applicator. I am adding just a touch more of color to this page. And as I said, I work intuitively. So I'm taking this and I am just smooshing around. Now, see, that seemed like I had a lot on there. So I'm dabbing. And I'm very careful near the edge, and I'm working it over, and I'm working this off the page. What I want is just the feeling of this page. It doesn't have to be exact. I just want the feeling. I'm going to take some of this blue. I'm going to slide this down so you can see it. And I'm going to put some of the blue onto the edge of this. And what the heck, let's turn this over. Let's see if there's some place that I can use this. I'll take this, and I want to add a little more blue to that. There we go. And inside of the tag. I'm going to add a little more blue. Excellent. We're getting there, okay? The back is pretty good. We're going to flip this over. I'm just going to dab a little blue. Doesn't make no, never mind. And I'm going to make sure that I put this back underneath. All right. I'm going to wait until some of this dries, and then I'll be right back. I'm back. This time I have a color called Dusky Purple. Again, it's the Derwent Inktense. I noticed that I've got a lot of purple shades in here, so I'm going to apply it in here. It may not look exactly like purple when it first comes out of the box, but you'll see. It will be. It'll be fine. If you notice, this looks like it's gotten a little black. Don't worry about it. We're gonna remedy the situation. And then there's some bubbles that are coming over from this side of the page. I'm not worried about that either. You'll see. It's all gonna work out. So now I'm taking some fuchsia, and I'm going over that. What the heck? You only live once, right? You can't even see my dates at this point, but that's all right. See, just work it in. I'm going to take just 1 minute to get a few more supplies, and I'll be right back. I have a white paper plate, plain old plastic paper plate, and I've got my stencil brush. I've got a little bit of Punchinella. If you don't have Punchinella, that's okay. I'm sure you've got something that you can use that will give you a stencil effect. And I also have the same stencil that was used on this particular page. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of my stencil, my paint, and I'm going to dip my brush in very lightly, just the tips. Dipped it into the paint. I'm going to brush it off just very gently on my paper towel. And now I'm going to just place my stencil. And if you notice, I'm going off the page. I'm going rogue here. Okay? And I am giving just a hint. I need more paint. I'll get more paint. Kind of going rogue. All right? Just little by little, adding my leaves. Immediately, these pages are tied together. Immediately. So I'm going to see where else I might be able on this spread to add some stenciling. And I'm thinking some vines would look really luscious coming up the front of this page. So I'm going to get my stencil, and I'm just going to lightly whisper soft stencil some leaves. I'm back with a color called Hyacinth. Again, it's just a regular craft paint. Cheap, cheap, cheap. I've got my stencil brush. I've got my paper plate. I'm going to lay my Punchinella down. If you'll notice, it's over the side of the page. And again, I'm just lightly. When I say lightly, I mean angel kiss lightly. Swirling the color through. And that gives me some lovely, lovely dots. Now, if I've gotten a little too light, I can always place it and add more color. What I don't want to do is overdo the color. I don't want to, I'm just adding another layer of texture. I'm going in, I'm getting more paint. Again, I'm going to the front side of my book, and I'm just adding a couple of dots to the front side. I'm coming inside of my book. And I really like the way this Punchinella is working, so I'm going to add a little here. And I'm going to add it right up to the orange tape. I am using the Punchinella to unify these spaces. I'm going to add a little more inside my tag. Okay? And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I'm kind of liking this. Okay? Add a little more there. It doesn't really show up in here, but that's okay, because we're going to add just a couple more things. Now I've got an applicator tool and some pan pastel. Several of you have asked how I get the glow. This is how I get the glow, with a pan pastel. This is obviously the yellow. I'm going to take my applicator. I'm going to dip it into my pan pastels, rub it around. Not a whole lot. This stuff is pretty powerful stuff. I'll show you. Look at the color. Look at the intensity of a pastel. All right? So I'm taking my pan pastel. If you'll notice, there's some yellow here. I'm going to highlight that yellow. Immediately, it starts to glow. Immediately. I'm going over everything else I've done. And I'm adding more yellow here to bring this into this. I'm going right over everything else. Looks like this could use a little bit too. Okay, I'm going to get a little more color. Add it in. Get a little more up here. Now I'm going to take my paper towel. I'm just going to lightly just wipe it. And whisper soft. You don't want to remove the color that you just laid down. I'm also going to look to see if there are any other places that I can add this beautiful color. And the inside of this tag could use a little. Could use a little more color over here too. Okay. And this already has great color, so we're going to leave that alone. I'm going to flip it over here, and I think this could benefit from a little yellow, don't you? And maybe up here. I've got my images, assorted images in my little kit. I've got some recycled bits that I keep from mail. I love stuff like this. I think I'm pretty finished with this side. I really like the way that it relates to this. I'm going to work a little more on this side of the page, and then I'll come back and show you how I kind of finish the edges off. I'm going to lay down all of my images, and when I come back, you'll have an idea of what exactly this spread is really going to look like when it's finished. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back in just a bit.